The rain had been falling for hours. Not the kind that crashes against rooftops or shakes the windows hard enough to wake the neighbors. This rain was quieter than that. Slow. Patient. The kind that settles into the night like it belongs there. Lucas sat alone in his apartment with only a dim lamp glowing in the corner of the room. Shadows stretched across the floor while the sound of rain filled the silence that nobody else ever seemed to notice. Before this story goes any further, subscribe to the channel. Because the stories told here are not just stories you listen to once and forget. They stay with you. Long after the screen fades to black. Long after the final sentence is spoken. Lucas used to love nights like this. Years ago, rain meant comfort. Coffee brewing in the kitchen. Conversations that lasted until midnight. The soft sound of someone else breathing in the same room. Now it only reminded him how quiet life had become. His phone rested face down on the coffee table. He kept it that way most nights. Not because he disliked people, but because eventually you grow tired of expecting messages that never arrive. The apartment felt frozen in routine. A jacket tossed over a chair. An untouched dinner sitting on the counter. A clock ticking louder than it should. Everything looked temporary, even though nothing had changed in months. Lucas leaned back into the couch and closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of rain swallow the room whole. Somewhere outside, a car passed slowly through the wet streets. Then silence again. And that was when the phone vibrated. A small sound, barely noticeable. But in a room that quiet, it felt enormous. Lucas stared at it without moving. The screen glowed against the darkness of the table. Unknown feelings crept into his chest before he even reached for it. Not fear exactly. Something heavier. Something familiar. Finally, he turned the phone over. And the moment he saw the name on the screen, the air in the room changed. Claire. For a second, he simply stared at it. He hadn't spoken to Claire in almost 4 years. Not really. There had been a few holiday messages. Short conversations that ended before they truly began. But whatever connection they once shared had slowly faded into distance and silence. Still seeing her name now felt strange. Like opening a door you forgot existed. The phone continued ringing. Lucas almost ignored it. Part of him wanted to let the moment disappear. Some memories are easier to survive when they stay buried. But another part of him already knew this call mattered. People don't return after years of silence without a reason. He answered. Hello. For a brief moment, all he heard was rain on the other end. Then Claire finally spoke. Lucas. Her voice sounded softer than he remembered. Tired too. Like someone carrying thoughts they hadn't shared with anyone else. It's been a long time, she whispered. Lucas swallowed slowly. Yes, it has. A silence followed. Not awkward. Heavy. As if both of them understood there were thousands of things sitting unspoken between them. Then another voice joined the call. Lucas. Aunt Margaret said calmly. The sound of her voice instantly pulled him backward through time. She always spoke carefully, like every sentence had already been weighed before leaving her mouth. We need you to come here. Lucas frowned slightly. What? To the lakehouse, Margaret continued. Just for a week. The lakehouse. He hadn't heard anyone mention that place in years. Images immediately returned to him. Tall pine trees. Fog rolling over the water early in the morning. Old wooden floors creaking at night. Memories he thought he'd forgotten suddenly felt painfully clear. Lucas sat upright. Why now? Another pause. This time Claire answered. Because some things shouldn't wait any longer. The words settled into him slowly. What's going on? He asked quietly. But neither of them answered directly. Margaret only said, please come tomorrow. Then the call ended. Just like that. No explanation. No details. Only silence. Lucas remained frozen on the couch, still holding the phone in his hand while rain tapped softly against the windows. Something about the conversation felt wrong. Not dangerous. Just unfinished. Like he had stepped into the middle of a story nobody had prepared him for. He stood and walked toward the window, staring down at the empty street below. Water reflected the pale streetlights in broken pieces across the pavement. The city suddenly felt far away from everything that mattered. He barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, memories returned. Claire laughing beside the lake years ago. Margaret sitting silently near the fireplace reading old letters. Long summers that once felt endless. Back then, life had seemed simpler. Or maybe he had simply been younger. By morning, Lucas had packed a small bag. The drive north took hours. Rain followed him most of the way. The road stretched endlessly through forests and empty highways while gray clouds moved slowly overhead. Occasionally sunlight broke through for only a few seconds before disappearing again. The further he drove, the stranger he felt. Not nervous. Not excited. Just pulled. As if some invisible thread had already decided he was going there long before he made the choice himself. By late afternoon, the lake house finally appeared through the trees. Exactly the way he remembered it. Old wooden walls. Warm lights glowing through the windows. The dark lake stretching endlessly behind it. For a moment, Lucas stayed inside the car without moving. The place looked untouched by time. But something about it felt different now. Quieter. Waiting. Then the front door opened. Claire stepped outside. The moment she saw him, she walked quickly through the rain without hesitation and wrapped her arms around him tightly. Not politely. Not casually. Like someone afraid he might disappear again if she let go too soon. "You actually came," she said softly. Lucas looked at her carefully after they pulled apart. She looked older than he remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Like life had placed invisible weight onto her shoulders over the years. Margaret appeared behind her in the doorway. Still calm. Still unreadable. But even she seemed different somehow. "Come inside," she said gently. "You must be freezing." The warmth inside the house hit him immediately. A fire crackled softly in the living room. The smell of fresh bread and lavender drifted through the air. Everything felt carefully prepared. Intentional. As if they had been expecting this moment for much longer than he realized. Lucas set his bag down near the staircase while Claire watched him quietly. No one asked about work. No one asked how life had been. Instead, Margaret poured tea and simply said, "Tell us how you've been feeling lately." The question caught him off guard. Not "what have you been doing?" Not "are you successful?" "How have you been feeling?" Lucas gave the kind of answer people always give. "I'm okay." But Margaret only nodded slowly, as if she could already tell that wasn't true. And deep down, Lucas realized he wasn't sure it had been true for a very long time. As the rain continued outside and darkness settled over the lake, he began to understand something unsettling. This wasn't just a family visit. Something had brought him here. Something waiting quietly beneath years of silence. And before the week ended, Lucas had the feeling his life would never look the same again.